So, ladies and gentlemen, take your seats, please. So, good morning, everyone. I would like to say hello first, and thank you for all for being here, and also thanks to all those who are watching us online or will be watching us later. And thanks to ALDE Party, which helped to organize it and supported it. Thanks to ANO Party, and thanks to the Institute and my colleagues from the Institute for Politics and Society, of which I am a chairman. And so thanks for organizing and co-organizing. This is part of Hans van Baalen town hall meeting, which are part of the conference on the future of Europe, which has been happening last year and this year, and it's a chain of debates between citizens and politicians about the future of Europe. We are here today to discuss, but mainly to listen to the audience and respond to your questions. I was asked first to read the house rules of this debate, because these Hans van Baalen meetings have precise rules. So the rule is that even will take full in English, no translation is provided. A colleague from the ALDE Secretariat will be monitoring the social media channels throughout the event, and we will be later on, they would be delivering questions and remarks. If you want to ask something for the live audience, in-person audience, raise your hand and we will provide you a floor. And for online audience, you write your questions and comments on the comment section. So these are technical rules. So I would like to, as I said, my name is Jan Macháček. I'm chairman of the board of the Institute for Politics and Society. And I would first ask my co-hosts for welcoming remarks. My co-hosts are Dita Charanzová, Vice Chairman of European Parliament and MEP for ANO Movement, also Vice Chairman of ALDE Party, and Senator Timmy Dooley from ALDE Party, who is an acting co-president of ALDE Party. So, Dita, please.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's really nice to see you also physically, and also warm welcome to those who are following us online. First of all, I would like to thank the Institute, to Honza for co-organizing this event. Also, it's my pleasure and honor to have our two co-presidents of ALDE Party, Ilhan and Timmy, with us today. And as it has been said, it's the 5th Hans van Baalen town hall meeting. So it's dedicated to a great European, great liberal Hans. It was my honor having a possibility to work with Hans in the European Parliament. He was a strong defender of liberal values, but he was also a strong defender of free and democratic Ukraine. He traveled in February 2014 to Ukraine to support the Euromaidan movement and support the Ukrainians in their fight for democracy and freedom. So I'm sure that also his legacy will be reflected in our today's meeting. But I would like also to pay tribute to the great Madeleine Albright, who passed away last week, a Czech native. She was the first woman, as we know, that served as a US Secretary of State. And among other achievements, she is especially known for being a big defender of Nato enlargement. So thanks to her, also my country joined the Nato. And I would just quote from her book. She said, "The best response to disaster is resilience." And the only way to build and foster this resilience in the world of today, in a world challenged every more by dictators, authoritarianism, is by becoming together as allies defending freedom, by strengthening our partnership, by working all together. So I think her legacy will be also reflected in our today's meeting. So I wish you a fruitful discussion, and I will pass the floor to Timmy.
Thank you very much, Dita. It is great to be here in the city of 100 spires, and I think it's appropriate that we would pay particular homage to Hans van Baalen, whom we all knew in different ways, but we knew what he stood for, and it was those liberal values. He was somebody of immense character and resilience through his own political career, and indeed right up to the end. And it is right that, you know, we've had these events in his name. This will be the 5th. We've been in Bosnia-Herzegovina, we've been in Spain, Italy, and Germany. So Prague is the next in that line. I suppose we're here today really to talk about the future of Europe, but not as people from the top table. We're here to somewhat moderate the debate. We really want to hear from citizens. And if this conference on the future of Europe is to be effective, then it needs to reach beyond those of us that serve in elected politics. It needs to reach out to the citizens and give a real opportunity for them on this occasion to go beyond the representative element of democracy and really give a voice to the citizens. That can only be to the benefit of the working of the European Union. I suppose the topic for discussion today, and I'm looking forward to hearing the contributions, is about European security and enlargement. And those two aspects are interlinked. In my view, and I think the view of most, security will only come with enlargement, and we really have to work hard in expediting that. I want to recognise Anno for being co-host today. You're great members of the ALDE Party, and we work really well together with you. The ALDE Party Bureau is greatly enriched by the presence of Dita as one of our vice presidents and also vice president of the European Parliament. She works extraordinarily hard on behalf of not just Anno and the people of the Czech Republic, but she has a much broader and wider view about how Europe should be structured and how we can work better together. So she's an invaluable resource to us on a broader level than just to you as Czech citizens. So I want to thank her and recognise her in her hometown for that. I think, you know, we can't waste any historic opportunity here. The Conference on the Future of Europe is historic, despite what cynics might say, and we hear the deflections all the time that it's just a paper-pushing exercise, that it's a tick-box exercise. But I would challenge anybody that suggests that to have come and look at the kind of work that's done within these town hall meetings and look at the dialogue and discussion that takes place. For sure, it doesn't draw massive crowds. It's not going to compete with a soccer or a rugby game, but people who are really interested in and are effectively the leaders and opinion formers, they've had their say, and I'm hopeful and expecting that will form part of the final deliberations. I think I just saw another quote from Madeleine Albright, which I'll bring to a conclusion on, where she said, "Good guys don't always win, especially when they are divided and less determined than their adversaries. The desire for liberty may be ingrained in every human breast, but so is the potential for complacency, confusion, and cowardice, and losing has a price." And I think that quotation right now should drive us forward with that European project. Maybe we have become somewhat complacent with what we have achieved as a European Union, and that has allowed us, perhaps over time, not to focus on the real threat to what was the essence of the purpose of the European project right at the beginning, effectively a peace process. And that's why I think we need to hasten the accession of Ukraine and Moldova and Georgia. And I think we need to be offering more than neighbourhood agreements. I think we need to put those countries on a fast track to being part of our European Union. And for that, I think that would show that what Madeleine Albright talked about at that time, that we're not complacent. We see the threat and we react to it. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having the ALDE Party as co-host today. And as I said, I look forward to the rest of the deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me introduce the remaining panelists. First, Ilhan Kyuchyuk, member of European Parliament and also acting co-president of ALDE Party from Bulgaria. Welcome.
Thank you.
Jaroslav Bžoch is a member of Czech Parliament and also Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs. Welcome. And Markéta Plesníková is the chairman of Young ANO, which is a part of the ANO movement, but it's these are like young supporters and members of this party or movement. So I would like to first ask all the panelists and speakers for opening remarks, and I would repeat briefly the topic of our today's discussion. So we will speak about the role of EU and in defense and security of Europe, relationship EU and NATO given current situation with Russian aggression. So what we will have to change and what should stay as it is. How to strengthen and redefine European security. But the most important question, since this is a discussion about the future of Europe and it's a very up-to-date question, we should definitely touch about Ukrainians, speak about Ukrainians' possible membership in the European Union. Should it be invited? Is it possible to speed up the process? Could someone be skipped, or should it be largely symbolic, since symbolic invitations could last for decades and might be counterproductive? So this is a question for all this, which I would like all the speakers to touch. So we would once again start with Dita.
Thank you very much, Honza. Well, I think if I start responding to all your questions, we will stay here till the lunch. But I would pick up on two issues that you mentioned: future of EU defense and future of the enlarged European Union. On EU defense, I think it's crystal clear that due to the war in Ukraine, there will be more political push in the European Union to do more when it comes to European defense. It has been always priority of France. France is now the president, has presidency in the European Union. So obviously they are even pushing even harder this agenda forward. And I think it's really a good idea which we all have to push. But at the same time, I think, as we always say, the devil is in the detail. So the detail for me is how we make this happen within the NATO. Because we know that from the history, the French aspiration has been always to create something like European NATO without the Americans. So that's something which is back in the discussion. But I would argue that we have to do more as Europeans, but we have to do it together with the US. So that would be my first kind of future EU defense strategy. The second, when it comes to enlargement, you said it right, we have countries like Turkey that has been negotiating the accession to the European Union for almost 30 years. And we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel at all. So what we need to offer to Ukraine is really what Timmy also mentioned, kind of fast track or something that would make sure that we make them closer to us as soon as possible. I'm a bit concerned because it was the European Parliament who was the only European institution that clearly said we want to give the candidacy status to Ukraine as soon as possible. We haven't heard the same from the leaders from the European summit. Even so, they said, yes, there is European perspective for Ukraine. They haven't decided on the candidacy status yet. And I think it's something which is missing, and it should be really the first step which we need to do as soon as possible. But I'm sure that Ilhan will follow up also, since we had a quite interesting meeting last week with our friends from Ukraine who are calling every day for their European perspective. And I think that we all agree that what we see in Ukraine every day, it's a proof that they are fighting not only for their future, but also for our future. So I think we owe them the European perspective, and we owe them the clear roadmap to the European Union. So I will pass perhaps to Ilhan to continue my thoughts.
Thank you so much, and a great panel. Future foreign minister, leading MEP, future president of the European Parliament, as I always say to Dita Charanzová, and of course the future of Czech Republic and leader of Mladi. Indeed, the conference on the future of Europe is an extremely important exercise, and I want to bring a topic a bit back to our discussion. What was the idea when we wanted to discuss Europe? Obviously, always had two challenges. Do we want to enlarge European Union, or we want to deepen European Union? And myself and people like Dita were always challenging the colleagues from the West, saying that we should do both. We should deepen European Union because the reforms are necessary. We need to reform European Union because that was the main message coming from the last European elections. People were saying to us politicians, we like the European project, we find it reasonable, it's a peace, it's a stability, it's a prosperity, but we want to have it in a more functional way. We want to have it in a more efficient way. We want European Union that delivers, works internally, but also is eligible to find the good compromises on big challenges, on be it security, be it environmental, be it digital infrastructure, and to find a new way for European Union. But also we need enlargement. And it is mainly about security reasons. It is mainly about the security for Eastern Partnership countries, but also for the countries like Albania, North Macedonia, and all those Western Balkan 6. And finally, we are there. And Dita, just to remind to ourselves what was the starting point one more time. We know that the Council will say, okay, and it's enough. We don't need to change anything more because we have the treaties and we should act according to the treaties. But also, we knew what the Commission will say. It's obvious that the Commission will stay between the European Parliament and the European Council. But also, we knew that the European Parliament will be the leading force in that process. But in order to make big reforms, big steps, you need to have the support of the citizens. And thanks God, today we have the support of the citizens. If you take the conclusions coming from the citizens panel, citizens are saying to the politicians exactly the same messages what they were saying to us in 2014 and 2019. We need to talk about security reasons. We want to go forward with enlargement. We have to get rid of the unanimity rule, because if we keep talking about unanimity, always somebody like Orban or other political leader in Europe will block important decisions when it comes to European integration. And that is not functional. That is not Europe we want to see. That is not Europe of the next generation. And thirdly, this debate is not only about the past, but it's more than ever about the future. That's why the younger generations are playing an important role on substance. They have the will, they have the courage, and they need to have the vision. Because let's be open and sincere to each other. What is the main problem of today's European establishment is the lack of vision. We don't know where we want to see Europe in the next 20, 30 years. And that should be our challenge. And I really hope that discussions like today will bring a visionary approach to the future of European Union.
Jaroslav Bžoch.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I will talk about the security and defense, what I see as a main topic. And actually, honestly, if we are here 2 months ago, we would probably talk about COVID and ongoing crisis in COVID and about economic and other stuff like this. And now we are moving from one crisis, one challenging time to another, and it's a war in our continent, close to us, and it's a war in Ukraine. In the security, it makes everything now a little bit faster than we used to have it in EU. Now we're talking about the strategic compass, which is French priority, and now everyone is probably in favor to close it as soon as possible, because we all know the issues what we are having at the moment. A few months ago, we were talking, if we talk about the security, we usually talk about hybrid threats, we talk about cyber security, and we didn't talk that much about the conventional war, because everyone was thinking that it's not going to happen in the region, it's not going to happen in Europe, and we all thought that no one is that crazy that would send bombs to another country. Yeah, we weren't that right, and we know about that. So if it comes to security, we know that you had quite a discussion about EU army. We have this permanent strategic PESCO cooperation, and now we are talking about investments in a conventional stuff for the army, and I think that making any new coalition doesn't make sense at the moment when the NATO and everyone know about it. I think the most experienced alliance in the world, and what we should do in European Union, it's closer cooperation. Now we are having also discussion in Sweden and Finland. They are talking about joining NATO, and we have to have closer cooperation with NATO. We have also to discuss in the European area if it's necessary to everyone has the same, for example, battalions, or if any other country will focus on, I don't know, paratroopers and anyone for the other part of the army, and that's what we should move forward. We can't stop thinking about hybrid threats, because part of this war, what is challenging us at the moment is also information war, and we can see it mostly on the social networks. So the discussion should be still ongoing with hybrid threats, information war, but we have also now focused on the conventional war as it is at the moment. So it's not that. Yeah, I will stop here, because you probably have more questions, and I'll finish here.
Okay, thank you, Jaroslav. Now, Markéta.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. First, I would like to say that it's really great to having some young voice here, because usually defense, security, and enlargement, it's not a topic that it's considered young, or that young voices should be heard. I think it is important for us also to have our say on this topic, and especially that this year is European Year of Youth. And I would like to share some personal story now with you. A few weeks ago, we celebrated anniversary of Czech Republic becoming part of NATO. And I remember the day when we become back to the West and part of this structure. I was at the first grade at grammar school, and I asked my father, why are we joining NATO, and what is it? What should it do? And he took me to Wenceslav Square, few kilometers from here, and he showed me the facade of National Museum, a big building at the Wenceslav Square. And you can see their halls. And he told me that these halls are from Russian bullets. I really couldn't understand it at that time, because he was referencing to the invasion of Soviet forces in '68 to Czechoslovakia at that time. And The only thing I really remember was the tone of his voice and strange look in his eyes. And I thought that, okay, there was some war somewhere in the past, but why we need it now? Why we need NATO now? And now, 23 years from that moment, children at my age, I was back there, are fleeing their country because of war. And they are looking also for our help. And to be honest, NATO we need NATO, but it's a little bit outdated, I think, because Lord Hastings said that NATO was created to keep the Soviet Union out, the Americans in, and Germans down. I think the last few weeks prove us that we need to thought a new strategy, because the Americans are basically on their way out of Europe. Now they are a little bit more cooperating, but still there is a trend of Americans going from the Europe, and the Russians are on their way back into the Europe. And we have to imagine a new security order. And I think that we are facing an unprecedented crisis at the moment, but EU is not new to crisis. I think we all remember last 15 years, it was basically one crisis from another. And the refrain from this crisis is really now well rehearsed. The EU is slow to react. Response is characterized first by internal disputes or disagreement between the member states, and at the 5 at the midnight, at the tipping point, we create some creative legal and political solutions. And it comes especially to the area of external affairs. The EU is really hamstrung by the unanimity voting and the variety of member states' interests, and also some external actors or factors that play member states us against one and each other. I don't know if you know a Twitter account named Is EU Concerned? Basically, it collects the standard responses to crises that the EU is really good at delivering. They are well-balanced statements indicating the level, especially sometimes like very deeply, strongly, extremely concerned. After the events of 26th, 27th of February, the response of the EU after the invasion led this account, the account Is EU Concerned tweet. For the first time in 8 years, I don't have anything to tweet. Because the EU emerged finally as an actor that can swiftly and effectively protect its strategic short and long-term interest. And I think we have to now find a new geopolitical role for the EU. And there is one word or two words, strategic autonomy. And I think it is not as something as latest buzzword in the long history of bizarre EU jargon, or some, let's say, term of Emmanuel Macron's campaign referring to the Gaullist time. I think it's the true new security imperative for Europe to fully embrace our continental and global role as a security provider. And also we need to think that countries as Ukraine or Macedonia and so on are not in our backyard, they are in our courtyard, and we should signal them that they are part of the Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Tim, do you want have some remarks on this?
Well, I suppose it's well recognized now that, you know, based on what we've heard here, we're really, I think we need to work really fast and really hard on bringing those member states that or those countries who are not part of the Union. If we're to understand what has happened and we're prepared to act more quickly. It's often recognized that the Union works well around the standard principles that are there, but there's a challenge now, and the challenge is to the security of the entirety of the Union. And some will say, quite rightly, does Russia intend to stop at Ukraine? Are there some other motivations there that will allow Russia, or will encourage Russia, to move further to the west? And we need to be prepared for that. And that's why I think we, in the first instance, have to expedite the membership, particularly of Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia. We need to give them an assurance about that, and we need to do that, I think, without delay. And until such time as we have a plan in place for that, then, you know, I think the questions will be asked about our where we stand on this. Okay.
Thank you. So we have some questions which came in advance. So one is for Dita, and it has to do with the disinformation and fake news in this current war situation. So what's your take on this? What's your take on the fight with disinformation and fake news during the war? We are also liberals here, and especially at this session, so we shouldn't forget Voltaire, right, who said that I disagree with you, but I would always fight until my last breath for your right to say what you want to say. So where is your balance on this?
Well, I know that it's your topic, that you organized several conferences on this topic, and you are right. We need to find the right balance between the freedom of speech online and the fight against the disinformation. But what is happening now is that, first of all, we have all realized the role and the importance of the big technological companies that they play in our society. And that the fact that they need to also take certain responsibility. The war in Ukraine is, in this regard, an excellent example, because we see a lot of Russian influencers with millions of followers being paid for spreading the war propaganda. That's the reality. We see what we call the monkeys group online that are spreading the war propaganda through different channels. It has been also released by the EU Czech factors that the group that was spreading the false information, the so-called anti-vaccine groups online, transformed themselves to pro-Putin propaganda. So that's a serious problem, and we need to get really the tech giants to do more. We are currently discussing the so-called Digital Services Act, which will put more pressure on the shoulder of the big tech companies, because at the end of the day, they already have it in their terms of conditions. They are obliged to monitor what is happening on their website, and if there is a clear disinformation, if there is a clear breach of these terms of conditions, that there are people spreading the propaganda of war, they need to act. They need to act. The European Commission has been in close contact with a lot of them, so they managed to stop the worst cases, but I would say it's not enough. And we really need to put forward, unfortunately, a certain regulation, a certain legislative measures to oblige at least the big platforms to fight the disinformation online. So I don't have good news, but the good news is that we are moving forward. If I compare what was in the European Union 2 years ago, we were just talking. Now we are acting.
Okay, thank you. So you are right that it's my favorite topic, but the question came from Daniel Sieberg from Sweden, so I should to be precise. And we also have a question for Ilhan. How can the Conference of the Future of Europe contribute to accelerate the EU accession process of the Western Balkans?
Well, 3 years ago, Ursula von der Leyen said, and I'm quoting, this commission will be geopolitical one. Geopolitical one, really? Do we have a geopolitical commission nowadays? And can I remind you some other geopolitical statements, you know, going back 10 years ago, when exactly the same statement was made by Barroso. And look at what happened with North Macedonia. They're supposed to start a first intergovernmental conference in 2015, and then we had a Greece veto. And then a couple of years later, we had a veto coming from France and the Netherlands. And now we have the so-called bilateral dispute between my own country, Bulgaria, and the Republic of North Macedonia. And because of that bilateral issues, we are keeping countries like Albania, who are doing their utmost in fulfilling the expectations of their own citizens when it comes to the European Union. They are just kept as a hostage because we still have veto rights for North Macedonia, and we're going to wait a lot of commissions to come together, discuss the historical in-depth processes, and we should hopefully come with conclusion by the end of the French presidency. So we don't have a geopolitical commission, but I think the Ukrainian crisis should be a wake-up call for European Union. We want to play an important role on geopolitics. Integration is a must. Integration is a must not only as a sentence, as a nice phrase that Western Balkans are historically, geographically part of the Europe. Yes, that's true. They are part of Europe. But we want to see them politically as an integral part of the European Union, because we need them for security reasons, because we need them for better economic development, and we don't live in a reality composed by national states. We live in a reality composed by big blocks. We have China, but China is an empire. It's Shanghai. We have, hello, Doc. We have United States of a federal structure. So I think the major question for this conference is, what is raison d'etre, as the French say? Where we want to go with the European Union? Do we need more federal approach, or do we need European Union acting on national level and European Union doing too little, too slow? Little bit in the Balkans, little bit in the Eastern Partnership. We're going to wait 10 more years for the next step. And my answer is clear. We need to have European Union doing much more. Quicker, acting quicker, but also acting more efficiently. And the best way to prove the credibility of the Union in geopolitical terms, I do believe, is Western Balkans. So the Conference of the Future of Europe should play an important role. Unfortunately, our decision to take them on board as observer members during the conference was not taken in a serious way. We wanted to invite them, and this was the official proposal of Renew Group in European Parliament, to take part as an observer member. So we listened them, we linked them with the policies of the European Union way before they become a full member of the Union. But some other fractions had a strong hesitation, and I still regret that.
Thank you very much. So there are questions coming in, and all of them are asking about this fast-track membership. So I will ask Jaroslav basically the same question. Ukraine fast-track membership and Western Balkans, which are waiting and fulfilling. So what's your take on this?
We should show and give Ukraine some perspective. We should show them that we want them in the EU, but it's in my opinion, it's hardly to think about any fast track, because I can't imagine how it should work. We have Balkans country, and we have they are waiting for years. They are making all the changes in their laws and stuff like that, and sometimes it's quite painful for their countries. We must admit it. And but on the other hand, and of course, there is. I know that there is a war in Ukraine, and we need to help them, and we are helping them. But we can be the European Union can be the one who is promising something we can actually give them at the moment. So I think that the perspective of joining EU is the right way. But talking about any fast track when there is a war, when there is troubles with the borders of Ukraine at the moment, I think it's too early to talk about it. But the perspective for joining EU should be on the table. Should be on the table, and we should tell them really clearly we want them in EU. That should be the message at the first stage, in my opinion.
Thank you. So similar question for Markéta, but very specific, coming from Kopány Bendekus Sarvas from Hungary. Events are happening quickly. Ukrainians are very pro-West now, but how will the EU make sure not to push them away with the issue around the membership process and alienate them?
Thank you for the question. I think we are also showing that Ukraine is counted on when it comes to the membership of the European Union, because we see that for the first time we are sending lethal weapons to the third country. And we have also activated special protection for the citizens of Ukraine fleeing the war zone. And I think that is one thing we have to do, show solidarity, show that we are doing what we can. We are really also the Declaration of Versailles, I think it's also a watershed moment in European history. And we should remind also ourselves that we really owe the Ukrainian people a lot, because their heroic defense and determination and also commitment to our values has made that we are really motivated, and we have a courage to stood up as a European Union, I think, for almost first time in history. And I think there should be a clear roadmap for the Ukraine to the European Union. But on the other hand, we still have to think about that to become a part of the European Union, you have to undergo a lot of reforms, and you have to make into your system over, I don't know, 60 years of acquis communautaire. And for Czech Republic, it took 10 years to make it. So I think there should be like clear strategy, clear roadmap, and not only also for the EU membership, but some plan for post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. And still, some people say that it doesn't have sense to show Ukrainian flags everywhere and so on, but I think that's what we should do all the time, to remind Ukrainians that we are really here, we are all Europeans, and we are ready to act as much as we can.
Thank you, Markéta. So we would now collect questions from you who are present here. So please raise your hand and introduce yourself, and you can also say on if you ask some panelists specifically, or if you ask all of them. I see Ondřej Houska over there.
Good morning, I'm Ondřej Houska, journalist with Hospodářské noviny newspaper. Italian or French politicians are expressing views that the EU member states should do what they did 2 years ago, namely after the first wave of the pandemic, namely to create a fund and go to the markets and borrow money jointly, this time for military or defensive purposes. So I would like to know if you are for or against it. I don't know to whom to address this question, but it's political, so for all the politicians, if they can reply. Thanks.
Okay, so we will start with Tim.
Well, I come from a country that's militarily neutral, but we're certainly not neutral on the humanitarian aspect or the moral aspect of this aggression. We've contributed to the fund that has already provided support to Ukraine. We've contributed to the element of it that is associated with non-lethal equipment, you know, life protection vest, helmets, and all of that kind of thing. I'm not so sure whether there's a need for that immediate response from a military or defensive spending perspective. I do think, though, that there is a need for that approach in relation to the humanitarian aspect of this. There are some countries that will carry a much greater burden than others. Part of that's geography. I'm conscious that, I think, Dita, you told me last night, there's about 250,000 Ukrainian refugees in the Czech Republic. I know there's a very considerable amount gone to Poland. Even in Ireland, we have probably close to 20,000 refugees for a small population of 5 million. So that will place a very, very significant burden if we're to show the kind of support that we should show. So I would support the principle of a program similar to that which was envisaged for the pandemic, or put in place for the pandemic, being looked at to support the refugee crisis resulting from this aggressiveness by Russia.
Thank you. Dita?
We've had a lot of discussion in the European Parliament on this topic, but it was especially linked to the economic impact of the war in Europe, because there is still ongoing discussion whether we should stop the Russian gas and oil in the European Union, and if this is going to happen soon, then there will be a huge economic impact on the European economy. So we were brainstorming, and you are right that the pandemic scenario is the one on the table. I remember the tough discussion we had in the European Parliament at the beginning of the pandemic, that nobody could have ever imagined that we would agree on having a European approach to borrowing money on behalf of the European Commission. And then we realized that was the only way out. I feel that we are in a similar situation, that if the war is going to continue, and I very much hope so, the European response to the Russian aggression would be even tougher sanctions, then there will be economic consequences for all of us. And we need to find a way how to pay it back to the member states. And I very much agree with what Timmy said on the question of solidarity among the member states, because now we see that this part of Europe, Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, are facing the first wave of the Ukrainian refugees. I remember the refugee migration crisis back in 2015, where we were also trying to find a way how to help the southern countries. So now we need also to find also financial resources, how to help Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary and Slovakia to deal with the refugee crisis. So it's not decided yet, but it's definitely the topic that we have to look at it, and I see it as a very serious option that we should take.
Thank you, Ilhan.
If I divide my answer to two parts, the first part I think is that we need a Marshall Plan for Ukraine, to rebuild Ukraine, to restore Ukraine, and that is important, and we can do it only with a great amount of solidarity. And the second part, obviously, as Dita was answering, the consequences will be big, be it on migration and refugees, be it on energy and other aspects of our economies. And this will have a big impact on the social life of people. And for that, again, we need a common approach. We should have lessons learned from the COVID pandemic as well. And I think one of the major lesson was that the recovery of the European Union can be seen only if we recover together, only if we exit together from the crisis. And I think it's time to come to these common actions. We have asylum and migration package on the table for how many years? More than 10 years, sitting in the council, and was blocked, sometimes not only for good reasons. And this environment gives us a big opportunity. If I sum up my answer, I think the crisis is bad as a crisis, as a consequences, and we will have deep reflection in our societies. But I think it's a rebirth of the European Union. It's time for European Union to rethink and to act together when it comes to migration policy, but also when it comes to common actions on economic development and security challenges. Certainly, I do support those of the panelists saying that we need stronger European leg in security system of NATO, which doesn't mean that we have to rethink our relationship with NATO, but also the Afghanistan crisis showed us that we need stronger take on our security architecture.
Thank you. Jaroslav?
I'll be really brief because my colleagues almost said everything. Regarding the fund, I'm not a big fan about it because first of all, we have to deal with the next generation EU. We have to see if there are any opportunity to move the money somehow, somewhere, because it's still, for EU, it's the same crisis as the COVID for us, if we talk about economy, for example, so it's still the same. Of course, if we talk then about rebuilding Ukraine, because if you see a city of Mariupol, there's nothing, it's just, so then we have to talk about if we would like to create any new fund, or if we will take the money from each member states or each country who just want to show their solidarity with Ukraine. So it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a hard discussion. But first of all, we have to see where we are at the moment, do our own homeworks in each country, and if there is necessary to have a new fund. But first of all, we should look deeply into next generation EU if there is any chance to move the money somehow. But it's just brainstorming. I'm not sitting in the European Parliament, so. But what I would do, if I'm there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaroslav. So there is a space for next question.
Thank you. My name is Roman Maca. I'm just curious about your input about the fund, and as you mentioned, Mariupol. Is there how do you see the possibility that this fund to support reconstruction of Ukraine or Mariupol, about using of frozen Russian money of Russian oligarchs, these yachts and so on? Is that a possibility, or it is nonsense? So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I suppose that would serve a purpose, but I don't know if that would provide enough funding to meet the scale of the plan. I think we kind of nearly keep that separate. I think whatever assets are sequestered, for sure, we need to find a way to utilize those. But depending on how the war ends, depending on, hoping that Ukraine will remain free and independent, and that, when the aggression ends, that it will end in a way that the Ukrainian administration remains in place and retains its territory, then as an independent country, it's not going to have the resources itself. So it is, I think, incumbent on the European Union and the member states to embrace the Ukrainian democracy. And part of maintaining it as a democracy is to rebuild it. And we've seen that in the past. Ilhan referred to the Marshall Plan. We saw the reunification of Germany, and we saw how that worked out and how well it worked out. So we've history, we've knowledge, we've experience. We just have to find the financial architecture and, dare I say, wizardry to make it happen. And it shouldn't be beyond the capabilities of the European Union, developed world, first world, to find a way to resolve that, because the only way that you will show the Ukrainian people the benefits of being part of a first world bloc is to assist them in getting their standard of living back to where it was. I mean, the divide is simple right now, and this is where I feel really strongly about bringing more member states into the Union. It has never been more clear, the divergence between good and evil. That's a reality. And so many of the countries in that region want to be part of what is a positive. And it also will help, I think, a little bit to address the point that Dita talked about earlier about the misinformation that's out there. Of course, there are actors in various different locations undermining the European Union, because the values of the European Union are the antithesis to what those demagogues and warlords are interested in. And, you know, it's a little bit like, to some extent, you're fighting armies at one level, but, you know, the armies are now congregating in a social media platform, and the bullets are tweets in a modern environment, and we've really got to work against that as well. So there's a lot of challenges for us, but it shouldn't be beyond our capacity to address that. If we share a common approach, then I think we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dita, do you want to add something?
I think you have summarized it very well. I was just thinking that we have a Czech presidency coming in 3 months, so I think that would be an excellent topic for the Czech presidency. Hopefully by the time that the war is over, and we will be discussing the future of Ukraine and how to help Ukraine. So I hope that the Czechs will play our role in this debate, and will shape the debate also with our history, with our lessons learned after the communist regime, and also the way how we, when we were exceeding the European Union. I was in Ukraine several times before the war, and the experience of the Czech Republic was always very welcomed and very much appreciated. So apart from the financial part that you mentioned, I think there is a lot that we can do as Czechs to help Ukrainians on their way to the European Union.
I think the most important is to stop the war, and I do appreciate all the efforts coming from US. Of course, European Union and Borrell is doing extremely good work on communicating and putting together EU 27. Our group was mainly critical on him, but I would give him a credit this time that he was doing his utmost to keep the unity. But also I support all the initiatives coming from Turkey and Israel. So all the steps are important, because I do believe that the only way for the world coming together should be the aim to stop the war. Secondly, the idea was putting in European institutions how we can take from the rich Russian oligarchs and give it to the Ukrainians. But we were discussing the idea together with my neighbor. If there is a legal way for that, we can do it. I don't know if there is a legal way for that, but certainly sanctions are working. We have to be more patient. They have to be calibrated. We're going to approve package number 5. Energy is still not there. It's a big issue for the union as such. And I think freezing the assets in the central bank of Russia is the most important part of the sanctions. So those things are working. We have to be, as I said, patient and coordinate our joint actions.
Thank you. Jaroslav, okay, so we have a question, this lady.
Thank you. My name is Jana Ryshova, and I'm from the law faculty of Charles University. Of course, European Union faces a dilemma. What to do first, what to do next, what to do in short term, in the long term. And of course, I'm not raising many questions, but one is relating to the citizenship, to the security, to democracy, to the institutions. So it covers a lot of areas. you mentioned that security, that the enlargement is the fast track. Let's say, the enlargement is the fast track for security, and it links to the citizens who feel like those who are actors to decide on what the security is to be. My question may be sound provocative in terms of the European citizenship. We know that European citizenship is something which is related to the member states' affiliation. If the crisis in Ukraine is raising the question of integration of those who flee the war, and if we do all the possible to integrate those who fled the war, and we did all the possible to make them integrated, the kids, in all aspects, is European Commission ready to integrate them in political terms and to think of European citizenship of EU without the membership of the country they come from?
Okay, so it's a very interesting, special question. Who wants to react on this, Ilhan?
Excellent question. We had a similar discussion, exactly similar discussion when it comes to Brexit. Can we have the Brits as European citizens without having Britain as part of the European Union? And legalistically speaking, it's not possible. But of course, we are speaking in political terms. Do we have the vision, do we have the courage and ambition to integrate the brave citizens of Ukraine? It's not on me to say, but if I'm one of the leaders of the European Commission, I would support that idea. But it's a floating debate in European institutions. I don't think we're going to find a common answer to that. Obviously, it's a big political question.
Well, it also is a question of sort of justice, that you would be rewarding those who fled, even though it's mainly mothers and kids, and you would not be rewarding those who stayed and are fighting. So I see a lot of issues around this. So is there any question from the audience? Okay.
My name is Jessica Riley. I'm an intern for the Czech government. And my question is if there are any specific actions that can be taken by the EU or anyone else to push the accession of the Western Balkans in the future?
Well, we already spoke about it, but maybe there is someone who didn't touch the topic, Markéta?
Well, as I said about the Ukraine, I think it's definitely, let's say, stay in touch and on track to afford clear roadmap and also assistance, and share what we know that have to be done, and offer a helping hand to those countries in Western Balkans. And as I said in my opening speech, to act as they are our courtyard, not backyard, to take them as a partners and really say we want you in, and this is what you will have to do on this time scale, and we are definitely here to help you. We are not opposing you. We just need you to fulfill these, as I said, the acquis communautaire and everything, but we are ready to welcome you in our family.
Okay, so I will have a question myself now. So if we think about some positive scenario, for instance, there will be some peace agreement in Ukraine at some point, there will be some compromise, there will be Ukrainians guaranteed neutrality, maybe they would give up some parts of the territory, we know, but it's between Ukraine and Russia. So, but what's the role for the EU to play, and well, possibly NATO also, and what's how is it's going to be with the sanctions? So it's clear that Putin would demand to end the sanctions, but this is not on Zelensky to decide. So can you imagine that these two parties make a deal and we will give up on sanctions and forget what Russia did? Or can you imagine that sanctions would be somehow part of the peace deal? So what's your take on this, Tim?
Yeah, I think the sanctions have worked and are working. Yes, they take a little bit of time to put pressure on the Russian Federation and on its economy, but I think we've seen the spiraling inflation rates there at the minute. That's unfortunately going to hurt the Russian people. It may not hurt Vladimir Putin or his cadre of very well-off people, but in time, as the economy grinds to a halt, it will become incumbent on him to, I think, sit at the table. I take the view, rightly or wrongly, that the Russian aggression was aimed to have a quick-fire attack and capitulation by the Ukrainians, and that the war would be over quickly. That clearly is not going to happen, and that's a negative, I think, from the Russian perspective. So your question really is, so what should the European Union be doing? I think to continuously tighten the noose on the neck of Vladimir Putin through increased and enhanced sanctions. We've got to be somewhat cautious, because there are some countries who, quite frankly, cannot turn off the oil tap or the gas tap. It's just not in their interest. And I mean, with sanctions, they've got to be focused on Russia rather than putting a greater burden on the countries concerned. But we, as a union, have to move much more quickly towards renewables. So I think the question you're saying is, when the sanctions are over and when the war is over, is it back to business as usual with Russia? I don't think it can be. And even though the normalization of activity through a gradual walk back of restrictions, I think the rest of Europe should have learned, I think has learned, that the future in terms of our own energy security is around ensuring that we've invested more in renewables and that we move much more quickly towards that space. That in itself will have a dramatic impact on the Russian Federation, because ultimately that's their goal. And it's our opportunity now, hastened by their aggression in Ukraine, to address our own situation there. So it won't be back to business as usual, because the commodity which benefits the most in terms of the trade, hopefully we'll have taken a different path, but we need to move really quickly on this. And it's not just about dislocating from one location in Russia to the Middle East. It's about becoming more self-dependent on our own natural resources.
Thank you. Dita?
No, definitely we cannot turn the page. I mean, every day we see the pictures. We see innocent people dying, women, children every day. And it's crystal clear that Putin and his regime must be held accountable for it. Must be held accountable. So I'm very happy that the International Court of Justice started already the investigation, and I mean, it won't be business as usual. It's crystal clear for all the members of the European Union. We had in the past a lot of discussion on our way forward with Russia. There are countries like us, like Baltics, that we have our own history with Russia already. There were other countries in the European Union still hoping for certain dialogue, for perhaps partnership with Russia, but it's over. It's over. We need to do perhaps more for the opposition, civil society in Russia. But there will be impact not only vis-à-vis Russia, but also on what we are doing in the European Union. And you see it every day on our agenda. Our agenda has completely changed, from defense to energy policy, to internal market, to our foreign policy. Also the fact that we are now getting closer to the US, the transatlantic agenda is back. something which we stopped with President Trump. We stopped it with the discussion on TTIP. Now we are back on track with the US. So there is a lot of changes due to the war, but we always say in the European Union that every crisis made us stronger. And I feel that is happening also nowadays.
So I will push a little bit more with the question. So I tend to agree, but on the other hand, like we all want peace as quickly as possible. And what if it is a conditions basically on behalf of Russia, we will go for peace, but if you provide us with this almost as business as usual.
I think business as usual is over. Now we cannot have business as usual with Russia, at least with Putin and his cronies. I'm not going to talk about further developments in Russian politics. It's up to the Russian people. But certainly we have to find a way to communicate with the civil society. I mean, we have great parties, be it Yabloko, be it Kasyanov party, Parnas, and those people are struggling. It's difficult compared to 2014. It's much more difficult to go out and protest because Putin, together with his Chinese friends, made impossible for the civil society to go and protest. For the last couple of years, he was building new jails. He was putting new cameras. So that is one of the reasons why the protests for Crimea in 2014 were much bigger than the last protest. And what is happening in Russia is clear. I do believe that Europe has a role to play. I want European Union to play an important role in the negotiations, not only to have France or Germany around the table, but to have a European Union as a pillar of stability and strength, both for the civil society in Russia, but also for the Ukrainians. Otherwise, again, we will come to the point that European Union is weak. European Union is not able to deliver on big issues, and that is quite a problem for all of us.
Thank you, Jaroslav.
Honestly, I can't imagine that there's something like business as usual in the future with this regime, what is in Russia at the moment. I'm specifically saying this regime, what is in Russia, because it could change, and we all believe it could change. But we have too many options at the moment. What's going to be the agreement? It's going to be some peace agreement, or just agreement, or ceasefire agreement, or something like that. And yeah, mostly it's about Ukraine and Russia. But we are all Western countries are involved. We are involved with sanctions. We are involved with helping Ukrainians. And we have to deal with it. If they are by the desk talking about any agreement, we have to know about it. And we have to support or talk to President Zelensky and deal with him too. If he asks us to, I don't know, take off some sanctions on Russia, are we supporting him? Yeah, we probably would support him if we want peace in Ukraine. But hardly imagine that there is something like business as usual with this regime. It's impossible. He broke everything what he can imagine in Europe, and it's nothing like. Even when there is a peace agreement, it's. I think that some sanctions will be on place for a long time. Obviously, we have to think about the people living in Russia, because even when with that hard brainwashing by the government in Russia, but we still have to think about them because it has impact on the civilians, and you can see that there's a big gap between oligarchs and the poorest people in Russia, and we can't stop thinking about them because if we talk about European values, if we talk about our values, we still have to think about them. But it's about the regime at the moment. So sanctions would be probably, few of them will be probably for years, and but not something like business as usual.
Thank you, Marketa.
If I may add something, of course peace is important. We are all there. We are aiming peace, but the next important question is under which conditions? Putin talks about denazification. I really don't understand it. I don't get it. He talks about Ukraine being neutral, like in Austria. but with the same number of troops. But Ukraine is four times bigger country than Austria. So the conditions are important, and in the next couple of days or weeks, we'll have this on the table, and it's again it's on European Union to be there and to play an important role.
Thank you, Market.
I would definitely agree that it cannot be business as usual no longer, because you cannot do business with the aggressor, and we have to put really stress on that the aggressor is Putin and his regime, not the Russian people. And I would be really happy if the peace talks would be going under the Czech presidency, for example, but I'm a little bit afraid that it will take maybe years to get the Putin and the other side to the negotiation table, and definitely it should not be him who will be dictating the conditions of peace, because now we are at the moment we all want peace, but sometimes we have to defend peace, and now we have to really stay strong, support the Ukrainian people, and show to Putin and his regime that we will not step down or step back, that we are ready to be here for as long as possible to achieve the peace.
Okay, next question. Okay, so if not, we are about to, we should conclude because the time is up anyway. So I would like to thank all of you for coming, for watching us online and online in the future. And I would like to thank all my co-hosts, Dita and Tim. I would like to thank Ilhan, Jaroslav and Markéta. And I would like to thank ALDE Party organizers, ANO Party, and I would like to thank my colleagues in the Institute for the Politics and Society to help to organize it. And I think it was a great event, and hopefully see you in some more positive times. Thanks for coming.